So I know that 50 years from now, you might have a different theory, but what is your approach today to investing?
So the other thing I make clear in my book is that this is not advice, and that's not just to make the lawyers happy. Like everyone invests differently. So just because this is what I do doesn't mean that it's what you should do.
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice for everyone. I'm a passive investor. I invest mostly in index funds, which are very broad, low cost, diversified funds. And I plan on holding them for 50 plus years. I never sell. And I do what's called dollar cost averaging. So I invest the same amount of money every single month, come hell or high water, every month on the first of the month, the same dollar amount over and over again. It's not based off of where I think the market's going to go next or what the economy's doing. It's just a consistent system to invest a little bit more for as long as I can and hold that for as long as I can. So that's how I invest in the stock market. My wife and I have a fairly high percentage of cash as our net worth. Like if most financial advisors looked at it, they'd say like, what's going on here? Are you saving for a new house or whatnot? And I always say, no, I'm saving for a world that I know is going to take me and everyone else for a wild ride. And I think most people think about risk. They only think about the risk that they can envision, that the risk that makes sense to them. And the thing that we know about risk is that the biggest risk is always what you don't see coming. I've used like 9/11, 2008 and COVID. Nobody saw those things coming before they had destroyed the world effectively. And at the personal level, it's the same. Very few people see a divorce coming. Very few people see cancer coming. And most people think it's not going to happen to them until it does. So I have a higher level of cash than most people because I want to stay cognizant that even if things are going well now, like things change and change abruptly. So in a world where risk is what you don't see coming, you need to have a level of conservatism in your finances that seems like it's a little bit too much. Because if you're only planning for the risks that you can see, you're going to miss the surprise 10 times out of 10. So those are my high level finance philosophies. Investing low cost, diversified for the next 50 years, and a high level of conservatism. I like to think of it as like saving like a pessimist and investing like an optimist.
Yeah.
I want to save my money with the idea that like, oh, the world's fragile and my career might be fragile and I want to be prepared for that so I can endure it. But I invest with the idea that like, if I can endure it and put up with all the ups and downs, then if I can stay invested for 50 years, the results will be incredible. It's like that barbell personality.
Besides this investing in the stock market, do you have real estate, other investments?
We own our house, and I write in the book, we own it outright, it was the worst financial decision we could have ever made, but the best money decision we could have ever made. That's an important thing. That's one of the things that like I can't explain on a spreadsheet why we don't have a mortgage. Because up until 6 months ago, you could have got a 30-year fixed rate mortgage for 2.5%, basically free money. And not having a mortgage helps us sleep better at night. We like the feeling that it gives us. So that's another like saving like a pessimist. I put it in that camp. Like I can't show you on a spreadsheet. I can't justify on a spreadsheet why we did it. But for like moral reasons in our household, it's the best money decision that we've ever made. So that's the only real estate that we have. And then effectively our entire net worth is a house, a checking account, and index funds. That's 99% of our net worth. And I think it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. There's always an assumption that the more complicated your finances, the better you'll do. I think that's like a knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, how can I make it more sophisticated? And I think it's almost always wrong. It's almost always the case that simpler is going to be better. So much of the time, I know it sounds cynical, but a lot of times complexity in finance is just an excuse for higher fees. But the results that come from it are always like rarely show up. So I think the more simple it can be, I love that I can like wrap my head around my finances in 2 seconds. It's so easy for me to track and think about. And B, I think when it's that simple, you're cutting out so many middlemen from the equation to make it as low fee as possible, which I think is, for us at least, the right way to do it.
How are you thinking about crypto?
See, I don't own any, so I could probably stop there and say that's how I feel about it. But I also would not in a million years bet against it either.
Yeah.
I have no FOMO in finance, the fear of missing out. Like it does not bother me in the slightest that when other people do better than me. So it would not surprise me in the slightest if crypto does amazing things, completely changes the world. If there is one view on crypto that I have, it's like, if you don't find a lot of it incredible, you're not paying attention. And if you don't find a lot of it absurd, you're not paying attention. You get like both of those things. And actually in any new industry, it's always like that. I always use the example of like in the early 1900s, there were 2,000 car companies and 1,997 of them went bankrupt. And 3 of them, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, like went on to change the world.
Yeah.
In any new industry, it's like that. In the 80s, there were like dozens of PC companies, and it ended up as like Hewlett Packard and Dell and a couple of others. There's always in any new industry like a massive washout. 99% of new entrants just disappear. And crypto will be no different than that. Whether that'll take 6 months or 6 years, but I would have high confidence that 99% of new crypto projects today won't exist. But as an industry, it can still do very well if the 1% that stick around become trillion-dollar companies. That's what happened with GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Like if you invested in every automaker in the early 1900s, even if 99% went bankrupt, you still did pretty well. But then the question is, do people have the iron gut that lets them do that? Like, do crypto investors, if they make 100 investments, are you okay that 99% of them might go under? And do you have all of your hope that crypto and ETH might, or that Bitcoin and ETH might be are the winners? If people have that mentality and they think they have that risk tolerance, then I would say great. But that's the whole industry of all of these, the whole history of all these industries, not just crypto, is like whenever there's a big innovation, there's going to be a massive, massive washout. And not like volatility, but these projects just disappearing forever.
Yeah. I know. So you've gone the very conservative route of low cost S&P 500 index funds, I assume. Do you have a portion allocated to just individual stocks of companies you believe in?
I'm on the board of directors of a company called Markel. So I have a lot of Markel stock, as a board director should. I have a lot of skin in the game. I have some Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company. He was a big inspiration early on. So almost for sentimental reasons, I haven't gotten rid of that.
Have you been to the annual shareholders
Many
meetings?
times. It's cool.
Really?
Yeah. It's a really cool time to go. It's 40,000 investors that show up, and it's crazy. A lot of times, the last couple of times I've gone, I've gone to Omaha during that time, but I actually don't go inside to the shareholder meeting. It's turned into just like an excuse for friends to meet at the place. It's kind of a pathetic way that people have.
But why don't you go in?
Because they say the same things over and over again every single year. They don't say anything new. And everything is like live stream. You can watch it afterwards.
If you were to summarize what he says year after year, what is it?
We don't know what the market's going to do next. Buy cheap stocks. Politics is crazy. Have a nice day.